talking about things that are holding you back, maybe stopping you or preventing you from making the progress that you want to see at work. One of those is about how needy you are, or to put it another way, how much support you require in order to do your job and be a member in the team. It's those team members who seem to require their leaders to really manage them. Instead of taking the burden off of leadership by contributing to the team and being able to be a productive member of the team, they become a distraction. The request behaviors, attitudes, and actions require the manager to actually engage and manage them. It's a distraction and it doesn't allow the manager or the leader to concentrate. So these are people who need a minute right at the end of a very long meeting, or they need other people's input and approval. They want to run something by them. Hey, let me run something by you. Now, there's nothing wrong with either of those if they happen occasionally, but if you're a person who does this regularly because you don't feel confident or comfortable in your own capabilities, that's when you become too needy. Some other examples of this behavior is people who put others on the spot with really pointed questions and statements, or they always need help finding that email tool or resource that we use all the time, but they just can't put their fingers on it. Another example is a person who ducks out early or has to take this phone call right now, and then they want other people to fill them in on everything that they missed. These are people who really don't or can't read the room. So I want you to check yourself if any of those things sound familiar, or if any of these next things sound familiar, then you may be somebody who needs too much support. And we'll talk about ways that you can actually lead yourself to be more confident and less needy. First, think about, have you ever had more than one boss or more than one person at work stop you and say, you're just talking too much during the meetings, or you're just talking too much when we're trying to get things done? Or maybe they've hinted that you need to be aware of your energy and pay more attention to who else is in the room. Perhaps they've said, hey, stay in your lane, let those people do their jobs. If any of that sounds familiar to you, then you might be requiring too much support at work. These are all examples of people who are really time consuming and take a lot of management and support and handling. If you're not picked to be on teams and projects, or if your boss is regularly taking you aside and questioning, why did you do this like this? This is not the way it's supposed to be done. Or last but not least, if you're put on an improvement plan, then I want you to really pay attention in this next section. I'm going to be talking about leading yourself with 4 particular examples, but the way that you can lead yourself applies to many of these. So if you're beginning to see that perhaps you need too much support at work, then I want you to pay attention in this next section, take notes, and think about ways that you can try to modify your behavior with these self-leadership steps. And as always, we're going to talk about how you lead yourself in a situation and how you lead others. So, example number 1, if you need regular repeated validation, you say things like, can you check this for me? Or can I steal 5 minutes to run something by you? Regular repeated validation, then lead yourself. Learn to work autonomously. Consider whether you really need help or if you're just feeling anxious and unsure. Look for a different coping mechanism if you're feeling anxious and unsure. And if you don't know how to do the project, the task, or your job, I want you to find multiple sources of support. Don't go to the same 1 or 2 people every time, but look around, observe other people's behaviors, get mentors and coaches, and use multiple resources to learn and to gain confidence. Now, for this example, if you lead others, then I want you to remember as the leader that you need to set clear expectations. Coach your team members to compliance of those expectations. So if you say, I want you to be able to do your work and not have somebody else check it before it's time to turn it in, as an example, then make sure that that's what you actually enable, that people can do their work, that they have the freedom, that they are empowered to do their work, and that when it comes time to check it, if they need more support and help, that that's okay, that it's a safe place to land. Explain the difference between asking for support and then needing support repeatedly in order to be able to be productive. Empower and instill confidence in your team members who are lacking it. Teach them how to do things, set the expectation that they practice how to do things, and then reward them, instill confidence, say, hey, you did a great job, so that they know that those are the right behaviors. Example number 2. If you're requiring exceptions all the time, you're probably somebody who's too needy at work. Examples of requiring exceptions could be things like saying, "Hey, I need to leave work early today," and you say that a lot. Or, "I can only work half a day on Friday." Or, "I need an exception to that deadline. I know I asked for an extension last time, but I really need some more time to do it right." Or what if you're the person who's like, "I had to skip that step. I know the process requires us to follow this step, but I just can't do it." You're part of a team. So I want you to lead yourself to be part of a team. Follow the process and be reliable. If the process is a problem, like if there's really a way that it could be improved, then suggest the improvement and work with your management and your team to make that improvement happen. Notice your own behavior. If you are regularly asking for exceptions to things, what can you try to do to reduce or eliminate that? It makes you easier to work with. If you're leading others and you have this situation where people are requiring exceptions from you, I want you to make sure you set the standards and hold people accountable. So if people are supposed to work a certain number of hours, make sure they're doing that. If there are exceptions, make sure they're truly exceptions and not regular occurrences. Tell somebody if they're asking for too many exceptions from you, and then listen as they explain why. Sometimes there are real reasons behind it that you can help them work through. This happens a lot when it comes to that process point where people are going around or circumventing a particular part of the process. That's something that you should look out for as a leader. Look for issues and frustrations and roadblocks that cause people to avoid or circumvent your expectations and then work with them to fix it. Example number 3, agreeing, but you're not really sure what you were asked to do, and then you fail to perform. You say things like, "Sure, I know how to do that," and then you really don't, and you have to go get somebody to help you. Or you say, "Yes, I understand what you're saying," and you really do not know what they said, but you were too embarrassed maybe to ask them to explain. And then you try to do it and you bring the work product or the result back and you get a reaction like, "Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that this way? That's not what I asked for." And you say, "I thought that's what you wanted." Asking questions is not being needy. Asking questions all the time and needing validation because you're unsure if you're doing the work, that's being needy. So if you don't understand a request, say so. Ask a question. Phone another team member who was in the same meeting and heard the same instructions and ask what they heard. Refer to published policy, procedures, subject matter experts. See who knows or where you can get the information. And then don't attempt a task if you know that you aren't sure how to do it and you're going to turn in a half-baked or late or really bad work product. That's really going to bounce back on you later. So lead yourself out of this behavior. When you're leading others, I want you to clearly explain your requests. Define your expectations, give really clear instructions, and communicate this in more than one way. If you're talking to people about what you want in a meeting, put it in an email and ask your managers to follow up in a conversation. Find multiple ways to help people hear what you're trying to communicate. And then make sure that you've been open about being willing to be asked questions, even if they're repeated questions, so that you can make sure people really understand what you've asked of them. Indicate that you're open to providing clarity along the way so people won't be afraid of coming to you for guidance. Example number 4, you can't take action on your own. If you're one of those people who is constantly asking other people for help, like, "Hey, Bob, can you help me with this report?" Or, "Anyone want to work in groups because we could get more done that way?" Or maybe you say things like, "Let me talk to some people and look into it, and then I'll come back to you with some suggestions," because you actually need to go find the answer somewhere else. That's a problem. So, how do you lead yourself out of that behavior? You should be able to perform your job on your own. If you're somebody who has to go find somebody else to tell you how to do your job, you need to put in more hours. You need to get a coach and a mentor, and you need to really pay attention to learning and practicing how to do your job well. You shouldn't need to collaborate on everything. If you prefer to work in an open setting and have a lot of people who can bounce ideas with you, that's fine if it's acceptable in your workplace. But it shouldn't be a situation where you do that because that's how you find out how to do things. So don't freeload. Considering options and making suggestions and waiting for approval is appropriate some of the time, and particularly when you're working on brand new ventures. But in general, you should be able to gather the information that you need and take action to do your job without too much other direction. If you're leading others, specify if you expect people to work on their own on a particular task or initiative. Call it out if you see somebody who is regularly using other people to get the answers or get the work done for them. You know who they are. Indicate if you expect someone to take action or if you're saying, hey, go get a certain amount of information, but bring it back to me before you take action. You need to help people know what your expectations are so they know whether it's appropriate to take a step. This is about whether you're empowering them or whether you want to have some input into the decision and the process. Help them understand what you expect. Recognize whether you're limiting people's authority or giving them the space they need to take action on their own. Be aware of your own tendency to control and micromanage and undermine your team's decisions. Sometimes the reason people don't take action on their own is because you didn't lead them, because you didn't set expectations in your leadership that they could do so. Solid contribution without being too needy looks like being on time and being reliable, sharing airtime with the team and not trying to constantly be the one who butts in, takes over, or needs to explain something. Asking questions when you're unsure, but not because you don't know how to do your job or you're feeling anxious. Meeting your commitments without excuses. Asking for help, paying attention, seeking out additional resources, and practicing until you're able to do whatever it is that your boss is expecting you to do and do it well. You can provide updates and you don't make people seek you out. And when people do seek you out and want an update, you're concise. You don't waste people's time. Remember, you are unique and you are valuable, but you're not more unique or special than other people on the team. So make sure that when you're working together, you don't need too much support.